Hi, and welcome to the Drum Woodshed channel. I'm Darren Scorza. In this video, we're going to pick up on a theme that I started in a previous video called the Two Johns exercise. In that exercise, we did the very common practice of taking stick control, page 5, and using it to either develop some interesting sticking combinations or some independence/coordination exercises for the drum set. In this video today, we're going to take page 5 and work on creating some exercises that will work on our independence, working quarter note triplets into the standard jazz ride cymbal pattern. Okay, the goal of this exercise is to develop some independence with quarter note triplet phrasing against our jazz ride cymbal time. Okay, we've done this. I'm sure everyone has tried this and maybe can execute it well. We've heard our masters play it, all that. This is going to develop just a little more independence across the kit and both on the snare drum and the bass drum. So what am I talking about? Okay, very simply, we are going to play quarter note triplet phrasing across the drums. Now, we could start that on the beat, and that would sound like this. Or we could start it with an eighth note triplet rest in the front and then start playing quarter note triplets. Now, I've heard a lot of crazy terms, whether in concert band or whatever, of what this rhythm is. I'm going to come up with a term. I'm going to call it an offlet. So when I say we're going to play the offlet variation or whatever, we're putting an eighth note rest in the beginning, and then we're starting our quarter note triplets. Now, this sounds complex, but actually I find most of my students and myself, I have more ease playing this one because it relates to some other patterns, such as Afro-Cuban 6/8, things like that. It's not as hard of independence to get going. That sounds like this. Again, this is the offlet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're done, right? No. Notice I didn't put any bass drum phrasing into that. Now I could also play it on the bass drum, but now what we're going to use is page 5 to develop some back and forth independence. All right, we're going to get to one more thing before we get into the exercise. All right, before we get into the actual exercise, we have one more thing to do, and that's a little self-assessment. Okay, we have to look in the mirror and look at ourselves and ask ourselves, can I play quarter note triplet phrasing easily? Easy for me to say, between on the snare or just the bass drum, okay? If you can't sit and just very comfortably, then we have a little work to do before we get into the exercise. Now this is where I get kind of specific. We talk about independence and we talk about coordination. We kind of use those words synonymously. I think actually we could break that up into two different ideas, okay? Independence is when I'm playing this pattern, I can do anything freely here and I can do anything freely here, okay? Coordination is more of a technical exercise. So before we get into page 5, I want you to look and see if you can play that. And if you can't play, then we have a little work to do. On the one that starts on the beat, it's usually that the second note of the triplet, okay, the second quarter note, that throws us. Now, normally we're kind of working and scratching our head and going, trying to fit it into the jazz pattern real slow. I have a different idea that works with my students. So what I want you to do is when you're playing that one, work on playing just the middle partial of the triplet a little bit. It would sound like this. That's the one that's going to be the hardest for us because it's not in a lot of our independence exercises. If you're using Alan Dawson or Keith Copeland, any of those Jim Chapin, that middle partial of the triplet kind of is at the end of the books or not existent. So you want to work on that a little bit. Now here's my tip. When you're playing that, instead of trying to fit it just against the ride cymbal, think of the coordination across your body, okay? When I'm playing that, I'm really playing right, left, hat, left, right, left, hat, left. Now, of course, I'm playing the rest of the ride cymbal pattern, but when I play that pattern, if I'm thinking of that and hearing that, that's working on coordination. Once you kind of work that out, then it turns into independence. I'll show you. Once I can play that middle partial triplet, and maybe you can eliminate the head going back and forth a little bit, then you're going to be golden on that stuff, all right? I might play it, practice it in the bass drum too. That's going to be right kick, hat kick, right kick, hat kick. Okay? Once you can do that, I think then you're going to be able to move on and play both versions, both the on the beat version and the offlet version, and now we're ready to proceed to the exercise. All right, finally this guy's going to get to the exercise, okay? And you probably can see what's coming. What we're going to do is we're going to take page 5, okay, and we're going to assign the right sticking to the bass drum, the left sticking to the snare drum, or let's say hand, because it could be any drum, okay? This is very common. We've probably practiced in swung eighth notes this exercise. Number 3. The old Keith Copeland book had these things kind of written out, but it's essentially what was happening, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually be slowing that rhythm down, and now we're going to use that sticking to create quarter note triplets, okay? And I'll have some graphics here to show you what we're doing in the beginning. The other thing is it might be a good idea to have this graphic printed out, up, or at least clipped out of the screenshot here. And if you email me at drumwoodshed@gmail.com, I'll send you all the PDFs you want. I'm famous for sending people too many PDFs. Anyway, so now what we're going to do is, again, right kick, snare, right kick, snare. Okay, L is snare. Let's hear it. Try to make the ride swing, obviously, and not be affected. Another term I use is intention. Capital I-N hyphen tension. That's that stuff that kind of goes across the body, okay? For some reason, it still moves through my rather large body, but that kind of breaks it up and causes some confusion. We're trying to break that intention up when we're playing it. You could play that all day. Okay, and I'll go to number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you just move along through the exercises. Obviously 5, 6, 7, 8 are going to be a little trickier. You might have to slow that down. Okay, but once you get through that, we still have the offlet version to work on. So we're not really doing anything different with the offlet version, okay? I'm going to do it with number 2. Again, if you've done some work and you've worked on that middle partial, you've already worked on the first part of this, or the first third of the coordination you need here, okay? Okay, I'll go jump down. I'll do offlet version with number 10. Okay, one more thing, okay? I talk a lot. You didn't think I was just going to stop there. Okay, one more thing that we want to look at. I'm going to show some graphics. Talking about independence again, we're trying to make this kind of float free. We have one more kind of coordination thing to look at. It's not as technical as the other thing that I was describing. And this is what the point of destination points. Sometimes when we're trying to plot this out, if we kind of think of this long chunk, we can get kind of lost in the weeds and where I'm at, okay? So what I want to do is I want to analyze the exercise against 4 bars of jazz time, okay? If we play that exercise, okay, against the jazz time, and we think of this phrase as a 4-bar phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? If we think of that in that way, the superposition of page 5, what will happen is on the 3rd bar, when we're doing the one that's on the beat, the first version, on the third bar of the jazz time, that will equal beat 3 of the second bar on page 5. And I'll show a graphic here because that is a little confusing to understand, but that's where it's at, okay? So you can kind of think as you're reading it, and if we count the number of notes, when we get to that third bar, we've played 12 notes. Chord note triplets, boom, 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 there you go, all right? So, I'll kind of, you know what, I'll hit the symbol on that destination point, and I'll play it with number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 bars. So that's your first destination point to look at. The offlet version also has the destination point, okay? Now, the first one we were looking at just happens 1/8 note triplet later. But the more important one is if you play 4 bars of the offlet version, on the very end, the last let of that phrase matches up with the ride symbol. And feel free, because of that, to kind of give the cymbal a little shoulder shot or whatever you want to do to kind of emphasize that. That's okay. Again, you're never going to sit there and play this jazz time over and over and over again with no variation. But let me play that and I'll show you that last destination point. I don't have to hit the cymbal because it's going to be very, very obvious. Okay, so feel free to hit that and give it a tag at the very end of it. Once you're done with that, now you're just running them, sometimes chord note triplets, sometimes the offlet. Have fun, move the stuff around the drums, and then finally just play it freely. That's our last exercise. Hopefully you'll have the independence to do it and feel a lot more comfortable playing chord note triplets against your jazz time. Just one more point, and then I'll wrap it up here. The last thing that I want to mention is sometimes when we play these exercises in a musical setting, I like to say to some of my students, they're playing great time, they're playing some nice comping, you know, they're doing all the stuff that we're working on, and all of a sudden they launch into the chord note triplets. It's almost like we shoot a pop gun, raise a flag, drop a banner, blow off some fireworks. Hey, look at me, I'm playing at chord note triplets. When you're playing this, really work to kind of float them in. So when you get these down, okay, try to keep them a little bit on the back side of the beat. And also when you have a longer phrase, maybe work on playing a little bit of a, what I like to call a mini scendo, okay? Not anything major. You don't start at piano and then go to fortissimo, although that's great practice. But you just kind of want to give them a little bit of a shape. For instance, the best way to practice this is on one that has like 3 notes in a row. I'll go back to, how about number 11. Sorry for that dramatic pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there I did a little bit of like over the 4 bars, a crescendo, and then I was also just kind of pulling up a little bit like that. All right. Hopefully, after some of those exercises, you'll be able to kind of be very free with these, move them around the drum set. Thanks for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing to the Drum Woodshed channel. If you have any questions, would like to request a PDF of this lesson, or would like to inquire about Skype lessons with Darren Scorza, please email drumwoodshed@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and keep practicing.